Now, joining us to discuss this further live from the United States is Mr. Hamdi Rifai. He's an executive director of the Council of United Syrians and Americans from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Hamdi, for joining us. Please tell me, what do you make up of this latest escalation of tension?
I think Assad has been testing President Erdogan and Turkey's resolve for quite some time. I think Russia has as well. And I think that the only way to bring this to a swift conclusion is by retaliating very strongly outside of Idlib. I think Turkey needs to hit Damascus itself. I think there are many military targets in Damascus. And more importantly, there is Assad himself in Damascus. This has continued for far too long, and I think the world needs to reach a recognition that the only way it's going to end is by removing Assad himself, and there is only one way to remove Assad himself, and that is by force. At this point, if this is delayed any further, it's going to result in additional loss of life to Turkish soldiers, to Syrian women and children, civilians, loss of property, and destruction of the Syrian nation. The fact is that as harsh a manner of dealing with this as that is, what Assad is doing to the nation of Syria is much more harsh. And I think that once Assad is gone, Russia will have to come to terms with that Turkey is there and that this is Turkey's backyard, and that under no circumstances was this acceptable for Russia to cause the forced fleeing of millions of women, children, men, civilians into Turkey.
Now, Mr. Hamdi, it also seems like Russia is playing a double game here. On one hand, they are conducting talks with their Turkish counterparts. On the other hand, they are aiding the brutal Assad regime in killing innocent women and children and killing Turkish soldiers. So what is your navigation through this?
Oh, Russia has been a dishonest broker from day one. In fact, we've seen that the reason people are in Idlib is because they were herded by fake agreements entered into with Assad and Russia to actually take people that were being sieged and bombed in other parts of Syria, throw them on these green buses that we all saw traveling into Idlib, into what I'm going to call a kill zone. Idlib has become a kill zone where there are 4 million Syrians living, many of them not by choice, but by fact that they were bussed there under false agreements with Russia to protect these civilians, to get them out of harm's way. In fact, what Russia was doing was putting them into harm's way so that Assad could wipe out 4 million people.
Okay, now, Mr. Hamdi, I'm sure you will agree with me, this is indeed a major escalation of tension in Syria, not just for the Turkish soldiers and the Turkish people, but also for the innocent Syrian women, men, and children. With regards to this, what do you expect the United States to do at this point?
Well, let me take a moment, since you've mentioned the Turkish soldiers specifically, that I pray for their families, for their patience, and for their suffering and their loss. And I am thankful to the nation of Turkey for what it's done, and for the Turkish people for their sacrifice. The fact of the matter is that the U.S.'s interests are now aligned with Turkey. The U.S. has an interest in ensuring that Turkey is successful in Idlib. If Turkey is not successful in Idlib, the consequences will be that the next target will be the U.S. itself in northeastern Syria. And the U.S. does not have a large footprint of boots on the ground, soldiers, or heavy armored artillery. So certainly that would be a very precarious situation for the United States to be. Their interest is ensuring that Turkey is successful. And of course we know Turkey is a NATO member, and not just any NATO member, one of the most important NATO members, one of the founding NATO members.
All right, and now are you expecting any sort of cooperation between Ankara and Washington to diffuse tensions in the region?
Well, not only did we see repeated communications today at the highest levels, but there have been talks going on that a decision might be reached for a change or altering of U.S. policy, a major shift in U.S. policy within the next week. So even if we don't see anything from the United States today, tomorrow, or the next day, I anticipate that the United States will recognize that it has a willing and able partner in Turkey, and that it will engage that partner, assist that partner with either air support or allowing the use of Patriot missiles or otherwise. Whatever happens, we know that the United States is able and capable. Now the question will be whether they're willing. And all indications show that there's a shift that has started where the United States has recognized that its ally, Turkey, needs this assistance and that the U.S. must come to that assistance.
Of course, because in the end, the United States and Turkey are great allies. Their partnership dates back to the founding of the Turkish nation. Now, Mr. Hamdi, my last question to you, of course, is not just Syria and Russia. Iran is also backing the Syrian regime. In fact, the ground support is being provided by Iranian-backed militias. What would you like to say about this?
Well, I think that we've seen that Iran has used the IRGC and its proxies throughout Syria and the rest of the world to kill Syrians, Libyans, Yemenis, and anyone else that it's able to. The fact is that Iran is a terrorist state. It has been a terrorist state since its revolution in 1979. Qasem Soleimani tried to institutionalize the IRGC to make it more of a regular fighting force. But the fact is that its roots were in terrorism, and it continues to act as a terrorist nation. No Syrian wants to see Iran continue in Syria. Iran has attempted some effort at engaging in ethnic strife, sectarianism, shifting of the population from Sunni to Shiite. These are all very illegitimate means of dealing with someone that is maybe not an immediate neighbor, but in your region. Iran needs to return to Persia and leave Syria alone.
All right, Mr. Hamdi Rifai, thank you very much for talking to us on A News.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.
And that was Mr. Hamdi Rifai.